Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is a conjunction that doesn't happen all the time, but it usually does depict some kind of disaster. Let me explain why. Because the energy and the symbology of what these two planets are about. I mean, it's huge, it's transformational, because Saturn represents endings, and Saturn also rules government, it rules laws, it rules limitations, and it does promote fear because Saturn is heavy. Saturn is this planet of heavy responsibility. And when you put it together with the planet Pluto, let me just say, whenever the outer planets, whenever they were discovered, whatever they were symbolic of, they brought into the conscious awareness of the planet at that time. And Pluto was discovered around 1939. And hindsight's always 20/20. I'm sure during that time that people didn't realize what it was truly about. But consider what really started happening in 1939. It was World War II. On top of that, 1939 dealt with like mafias. The mafias were running rampant in Chicago and all around the world, really, as well as dictators. Hitler started and came out. But what really came out of that was that was the year that they discovered atomic energy. And Pluto's symbology deals with major shifts and transformational changes such as this. Now, let me remind everyone, this conjunction is not that rare. So it's not like we have a World War II all the time. We don't. But I just want you to get some feeling of what Pluto's energy represents and what Saturn's energy represents. So together, they represent a breakdown of the old, because Saturn can rule the old, the outdated, limitations, things that limit us. And Pluto is this expansive energy that destroys that which is holding us back, which this can be really positive. Because whenever things grow and need to change, this is the explosive energy that's going to make it happen. And this is most of the time what needs to happen. So looking at this, let's talk about this cycle. Now, this cycle takes for Saturn and Pluto to transit and catch up with each other and conjunct about every 33 years. So the last time we had an actual conjunction of with Saturn and Pluto, it was around 1980, like 1980 to 1982, give or take 6 months, somewhere around in there. And, you can go back in time and see what it was relative to. Now, sidereally, they were conjunct in the sign of Virgo. And that dealt with order, with bringing things together. And when I went back, Virgo also deals specifically with health and healing and disease many, many times. And 1982 was about the time that the AIDS virus came about. And also 1980 was the time of the Iran crises, where they took all the American hostages, and it was a mess between the United States and Iran. So those were the things that conjunction brought into being. Now, there's also what I call the hard aspects. So every 9 years, Saturn and Pluto will form either a square or an opposition. So a hard aspect is a conjunction, a square, or an opposition. So a square is 90 degrees. So it's like when you think about the cycle of the waning moon. You think about a quarter moon, the 2 quarter moons, the full moon, and the new moon. So you can kind of think of it as you divide that up into 4 hits. So when Saturn and Pluto are conjunct, then nine years later, Saturn will square Pluto. And then another 9 years later, it will oppose Pluto, which that will be, what, 18 years. And then another 9 years, you add another 9 years, that will be the waning square, if you may call it that. The first square is the waning square. The last square will be it's the waxing and the waning. So the one that's from the conjunction to the first square will be the waxing square. And after the opposition, which is 9 years from that, then 9 years from the opposition will be the waning square. And then you have the conjunction again, and all of that equates to about 33 years. But every time they go into a square, an opposition, or a conjunction, there is a bit of destruction. Things have to be sort of dissolved because these are the hard aspects between Saturn and Pluto. So if we go back, there was always some type of disaster. They were a little different. Of course, this is going to be relative to what sign they're in. But going back about nine years ago, going back to around 2010, we had that Haiti earthquake. It was catastrophic. I mean, it was a really devastating earthquake. Also, we had the Chile earthquake. We had a string of earthquakes around that time. Even 2011 was the Japan earthquake. It was like things started to shake during that time. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons was this hard aspect that Pluto and Saturn were in a square to each other. And another thing that happened around that time, very interesting, was that oil spill that was in the Gulf that was horrible. And if you really consider this, Saturn rules crude oil. Saturn's black, what's underneath the earth. And therefore, that could be why there seems to be more earthquakes when we have this Saturn-Pluto hard aspect. Now, when Saturn was opposed Pluto, this was 9 years prior to that. And that was 18 years ago from now, which was what? September 11th, it was 2001. That was another disaster. And even if you go back 9 years prior to that, you're going to find that this was around 1992 to 93. It was the time of the first World Trade bombing. So there's always something relative to disaster, a breakdown of the old, what confines, what limits us, and it usually causes a transformational change because of some type of breakdown. And of course, 1980, taking it back to the exact time that we had that conjunction in Virgo, it dealt with so many things such as AIDS and the Iran crises. But now we're going to have the Saturn-Pluto coming up here. They're first going to come together in the very last degree, talking sidereal placements, 29 degrees of Sagittarius. And that's going to be the breakdown of the old thoughts and beliefs with religions and fears and belief systems. They've got to explode and change. But of course, there's going to be a big fight before, and this is what's causing a lot of discontent, war, and problems currently in the world. And there's going to be a breakdown of what? The governments around the world. Why? Because we've got Saturn ruling government and control and rules, regulations, but Pluto explodes it. Pluto breaks it all apart, destroys it, so that something new can evolve out of it. So after we have that 29 degrees of Sag experience, then Saturn and Pluto will be together in the early 0 degrees of Capricorn. Saturn likes to be in Capricorn, though, I will say this. So there is going to be a radical shift and a radical change. And this is all due to happen when? 2020. 2020, we have the Saturn-Pluto coming together in the last degrees of Sagittarius and the first degrees of Capricorn. And this is going to break apart the old systems, the old banks, the way everything's been run before. Everything's due to change. And don't forget, during these times, we have the eclipses falling close in hand here with K2 with Saturn right now. And we have the eclipses, we have Saturn Pluto, we have Saturn conjunct Jupiter. I mean, this is the sum accumulation of so much energy that's about to explode this year. And you can feel it. It's building. It's building. People are not in their right minds right now. And people are fighting. People are arguing. People are mad. People are going crazy. And something needs to happen, because it's not working. But, you know, we have these cycles that sort of put us all in place, help us realize what we're doing and change things for the better. It's got to be for the better. Things are growing, things are expanding. And what happens is people try to hold on to the old and not accept the new. And because of that, that's where we come into these crises and explosive events that are very destructive. But this is the energy. And what happens is the breakdown of the old patterns. Old doesn't want to change easily, so it holds on to what it knows, the past, what it's comfortable with. But Pluto breaks that all apart. And then we have a new beginning, but it doesn't ever come easy. When will humanity learn? Probably never, because we're in a world of duality where things are opposite and things come together and they clash. But then we have a time of peace. Then we go back into a world where they change, but they need to change more. And that's where the explosive events come to promote and to bring the necessary needed changes that must occur. So look at this cycle. It's all a cycle, and it's all a part of our growth. And our growth crises, the hard knocks that happen during the time of the most incredible times of growth will always come when the old has to change, and Pluto with Saturn are representative of that. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to study Vedic astrology with me, I have an online university. Go to University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.